Amy Cook is the founder and financial advisor at Maven Lane Financial Group. Amy's career spans over 2 decades in financial services, transitioning to financial advising in 2009. She's the author of the Amazon bestseller, Your Money Narrative, which delves into how personal experiences shape financial behaviors and decisions. As Amy worked on her own money narrative, she helped her clients do the same with a mission to build lasting legacies through effective financial decision making and strategies. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Bill, a graduate, who says the Deep Wealth Mastery Program has transformed the KPIs we're using to accelerate growth and profits. Or how about Emery, who says, and I love this, and I quote, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program helped me create the right mindset for both growing my business and later my future exit. I now know what questions to ask, what to do and not to do, which is priceless. The team and I have found dangerous skeletons and gaps that we're now addressing due to the Deep Wealth Program. Today, our actions have a massive ROI. Absolutely love that. And now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Bruce says. And I quote, as a business owner, I'm always looking for new programs, systems, CEO peer groups, and strategies to improve my business. Hands down, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program is the absolute best. I'm both growing my business and preparing for a future exit at the same time. It doesn't get any better. And I got to tell you, as I hear these testimonials, this is exactly why I do what I do. My mission, the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, is to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time and one liquidity event at a time. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery, and that's exactly what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 3 years away or 33 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. Better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll see where you are at your business and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high tech, SaaS, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. I got to tell you something. In the book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, the classic book, he said, our inner narrative, what we tell ourselves in our inner mind, that manifests in our outer world. So when it comes to money, when it comes to finances, what's your story? Is it a good one? Is it not a good one? If you're wondering, if you want to improve it, if you want to get it to the top level to get those incredible results, you've come to the right place. We have a very special guest today. Amy, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. And Amy, there's always a story behind the story. So what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Well, first, Jeffrey, thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and excited about the topic. What got me to where I am today? That's a long story, but I'll try to give you a condensed version here. I've been working with clients as a financial advisor for 15 years. Prior to that, I worked in the mortgage business. I noticed a theme with money narratives, if you will, money stories that sort of repeated themselves over and over. And then I started to notice them within myself and started to take a hard look on what was I doing, in my own life that I wasn't getting where I wanted to be or go and do the things that I wanted to do. What was holding me back? And as I dived in and started looking at some of these stories, I realized that there were some significant things that were feeding in, that were sort of directing the decisions that I made, that had gotten me to that point. And so I started to shift some of those things. And that's kind of where this money narrative concept came from.
And Deep Wealth Nation, go to the show notes. In the show notes, you're going to see a link to Amy's book, Your Money Narrative, Understanding Your Story to Build a Stronger Financial Future. Click on the link, pick up the book, whether it be a Kindle or paperback or even the Audible, and go through it. It's absolutely incredible. And so I'm wondering, Amy, before we start going big picture wise in terms of what you're seeing out there for people and what it's been like for your clients that you've been working with, really for your journey, what were some of the big standouts for you? What happened in your own personal journey that had you just rethink everything in terms of your money narrative?
For me, it started at an early age, yeah, when I was 6 or 7 years old, I believe. My parents were going through some hard times. They lost our family home. And I realized that it was at that point that I sort of decided that money was the solution to all of life's problems. And of course, money can solve a lot of things. But what I couldn't figure out was why, no matter what I did, I was kind of spinning my wheels and trying to grab it. This will solve it. I need more. I need to stack a few more dollars. But it wasn't really giving me the feeling or the sense of accomplishment that I really wanted, because fear was really driving a lot of my decisions. So it was truly an endless rut, if you will, until I started to look at it and realize that it really wasn't about money at all. That sense of security or lack of was coming from a deeper place. And I started to look at it. And then that unfolded from there, where once you look at one thing, you start looking at another thing. And then sometimes you can recognize it in other people as well. And that's where the opportunity is to uncover some of those things and try to improve on them.
And so, Amy, as you're talking about that, you would be the first to say, Jeffrey, everyone's journey is going to be different and they all have their own individual paths to follow. And I would completely agree with that. But that said, when you look at yourself, when you look at other people that have begun to work with you, is it the good old 80-20 rule, Pareto's law, that 80% of the so-called issues are coming from 20% of the same things that either we're doing or we're not doing? Are there patterns that you're seeing?
I think so. I mean, first and foremost, the patterns that I see may not be patterns that others are seeing. So there's that. So until we're ready to look at things, there really isn't. It's hard to change them until you see them. But I do notice that a lot of it really stems from kind of how we were raised and our upbringings and what experiences we had, and these formations around what's good and what's bad about money. And a lot of that comes from our parents, and it's not necessarily any ill will. It's just what they learned, and it's a generational thing. And so it passes on.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like how we're growing up with what our parents, what they were believing, whether it was true or not true, but that gets passed on to us and that can really change our trajectory. So all that said, I mean, what would be some of the more common myths that people tend to buy into, but it's really not the case? And actually, if we continue down that path, it could actually harm us or hurt us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we could look at a number of things, like having too much money is bad, or it's greedy, or shame. And it's really the emotions around it, shame and guilt of not having enough. I mean, in our society, we don't really talk about money. And a lot of people feel that if you talk about money, you're bragging. Or if you don't have enough money, you're a failure. So there's some very strong beliefs around money. In and of itself, it's just paper, right? But it's what it does for us. It provides for our families, it provides security in its own way. But if we aren't looking at it with the right lens, it really is just a tool at the end of the day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I know, I want to say it's early on in the book, you're talking about yourself and you're saying it felt like it was a bicycle race. And you're talking about that whole journey with that. And I could really relate with that, Amy, because I know for myself, when I was building the business, and then when I knew at one point I'd be selling the business, in my mind, wrongly, I said, okay, Jeffrey, cross that finish line, you'll get all these zeros. Life's problems are over. You're now on easy street. And thankfully, we did cross the finish line, but it wasn't anywhere near what I thought it would be. Because, and you can share Jeffrey on base or off base with you and others, Amy. I found the next day after the deal closed, well, Jeffrey woke up and yeah, I had more zeros in the bank, but the same fears, the same hopes. I was still the same person. And well, money, yes, it can definitely make life easier. It's not going to solve all the problems. And it's certainly not going to, as the saying goes, it's not going to buy happiness. Thoughts about that?
Completely agree. I mean, those are things that come from a deeper place where we look at kind of why we've done the things that we've done, why we fight so hard for the things that we think that we need to do or need to have. And it's really, I think, something that you never truly arrive. I don't think I'll ever get to a place where I say, I've arrived, that's it, I know everything there is to know and I'm done. It's just kind of a nonstop journey where you're just always looking at decisions that might not be helping or might not be serving you. And you go, what is that about? Is that about something else? And there's so many fears around financial decisions that often come from a place that really, if you look real hard at it, doesn't make a lot of sense. Like fear around the market or the market going to zero, which of course that would require every company to go bankrupt and the entire, which if that happens, we've got bigger problems. But I mean, not to say that anything is impossible, or perception around safety in banks and just different things. And they usually kind of stem back to something we were told or that we were raised to believe or that we just ingrained in ourselves, and we continue to make all of our decisions based on those things. Well, if it's not working, it's consider looking at some of that stuff.
And Amy, as you're talking about that, what's interesting, and you spoke about this in the book, where you shared, and there's always two sides to the coin. So on the positive side, you talked about your dad, and you're saying how your dad was very transparent about the money. I always spoke about that. The flip side of that, though, was you felt some of the pressure that your dad felt, where you didn't have enough as a family, and that imprinted upon you. And unknowingly, you took that into your life now, and now you're grown up and you're a professional and you're doing your thing. Can you share with Deep Wealth Nation what that was like and that realization for you? Because where I'm coming from with that question, it doesn't just affect us personally, it affects those around us. And as entrepreneurs running companies, well, that's probably going to spill over into the company culture, into the leadership team, into our front end, all the employees and team members all the way through. So it definitely has some impacts based on some of those beliefs, whether they're right or not. So can you share with us what's going on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And no matter what it is, it's our truth. And our truths can right or wrong, that they simply are what they are. And my dad was an entrepreneur, and I credit him with everything entrepreneurial about myself. And he brought me in really early. I was doing all of his billing and accounts receivables at a very young age. And so I was keenly aware of what money was coming in and what money wasn't coming in. However, I didn't have all the facts. So all I knew was, did we get any checks today? No, we didn't get any checks today. So there was a big space of, what does that mean? Does that mean we can't eat? Does that mean we can't put gas in the car? Because I didn't have the whole family picture. I didn't know what all the expenses were. So to me, it was just following these dollars. And then I would notice that his stress level was heightened when things weren't functioning, money wasn't coming in, or business was slow, or he owned a trucking company. So it's like the trucks broke down and it had to do a number of things to fix that. And he was very too transparent almost. So I just developed all of these ideas, which really came down to more money solves these problems. And that is true. It would have solved some of those problems. But what I was really worried about was him. And I was worried about his health and seeing him stressed out. So at the core of it, it was about the relationship and how much I loved my dad and didn't want to see him like that versus the money.
Yeah, and so much going on there. And let me ask you this. Once we realize the narrative, and maybe on the flip side, for some of the listeners in Deep Wealth Nation, they have a terrific money narrative and it's positive, it's upbeat, and it's taking them to some incredible places, it's not holding them back. But that said, I would suspect, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, that out of 100 people, out of 1,000 people, that the vast majority of them likely don't have the best money narrative. Thoughts on that?
I think that it's a blend. It's like that story might be one that didn't serve me. But I could tell you a number of stories that did. Like, for instance, when I was in economics, which was my favorite class in high school, and we were doing an exercise where this was back when, to check stock prices, you had to get the newspaper in the morning and watch that movement that way. And we had an exercise where we had this hypothetical money that we invested in chose stocks. Well, my dad jumped in and said, hey, why don't we actually buy them? And whatever money you put in, I'll match it. So then having some skin in the game, it became a lot more exciting. And what it did was it removed my fear at a very young age around investing because the stock went up, the stock went down. It wasn't the end of the world. We watched it, bought more shares, and it was an early narrative that was formed where it was fun and it wasn't this thing to fear. Whereas someone else might be in a situation where they say, oh, the stock market's very volatile, very scary, very this, whatever they're told. And then they sort of carry that through and go, well, I'm not going to go near that. I'm not going to touch it. And so in turn, they stick their money under the mattress or in the bank, and then they're losing money, right? Just from an inflation perspective of just having money sitting there. That's kind of an other end of the spectrum example. So I think there's all types of maybe small narratives that build together that create, who we are. And a lot of them serve us. And a lot of people have a lot of strong narratives. And a lot of us, I think, have a mix. I don't think it's all good, all bad. I think we're all different, and it's kind of just what forms us.
And in your book, I love how you took different scenarios and you broke it down and you walked us through it. So, as we're going up the teenage entrepreneur to just getting started, and then we're going to the sandwich generation, the broke millionaire, the dilemma in divorce, an empty bucket, and all those things that go along with that. But let's go back to the beginning. So, I'm a listener in Deep Wealth Nation. I'm hearing this conversation, Amy, and now, probably for the first time, I'm becoming aware that, hey, there really is a narrative around how I think about money, how I think about wealth. What should I be doing, number one, to begin to become aware of the narrative? And then when I see parts of the narrative that really work for me, but there's other parts that don't, how do I begin to change that in a way that really works for me?
Well, I think the first step is really just awareness. If you're a business owner and you're in a similar rut that seems to just perpetuate over and over, that you can't get a hold of one particular part of your business, or you're struggling in one area or multiple areas, start to look at it and just ask why. I wonder why this, even though my number one priority to not do X and do Y instead, I continue to find myself in that X range. Why is that? And and if you ask that question enough, you might start piecing some things together that I think deep down we do things, we perpetuate things, even though we really don't want to. And it's not a change that happens overnight. We have to really dive in and look at what it is or how it's serving us to continue to do things a certain way, to really climb out of it and do things differently.
Okay. So it's self awareness of seeing what's there. And Amy, I would imagine that the narrative that's working for me today, as great as it is, life happens, circumstance changes, and perhaps it's not going to start working tomorrow. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's just it's a never ending process of progression. It's like the tortoise and the hare. We're moving, and then we look back and we see progress, because sometimes we can't really see it day to day. But then if you take it in chunks of time and you look back and you go, wow, okay, see a ton of progress here, not so much here. And some of it takes longer than other pieces. It's a journey. It's a journey. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's true.
And speaking of cliche but true, I'm going to ask a question that falls into that category, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. When it comes to the money narrative, between let's look at a group of people who have, let's say, lasting wealth, they're successful. And then there's those who are really struggling to have that lasting wealth. They're struggling to make the ends meet, so to speak. And they're on this treadmill, that bike race that is just not happening for them. What would be some of the biggest differences in the mindset and that money narrative that's going on with those two groups?
We have to be willing to be honest with ourselves. And that can be really hard sometimes, because entrepreneurial mindset, we want to be successful. We're competitive. We want to win. And it can be difficult to really be exposed in that way, where we're acknowledging our weaknesses, and it's sort of exposing that in a transparent way, even to others, to say, I'm working on this. That can be hard to do, but it's a habit. This book, for instance, it was really hard for me to talk about myself. When I read it back, I was like, gosh, I don't know if I really want other people that I know and don't know reading this story, but then there's an authenticity there that is valuable, and it actually deepens your connection with others that know you, and new connections where people that don't know you feel like they do know you a little bit, and it really didn't hurt anything, which was actually a little bit of an aha or some kind of an eye opener for me too.
Yeah, it's interesting, and particularly on the entrepreneurial front, where we're running the businesses, and if we're open, if we're honest about this, and with your own background when it comes to money, the decisions that we make for a business, are we going to do this expenditure? Are we not going to do this expenditure? Well, that's going to have both implications and also unintended consequences. If we don't do it, maybe something's not going to happen that the business needed, or if we did it, but we shouldn't have done it. Again, that's going to potentially hurt the business, or maybe the business is going to grow and benefit from that. So I'd imagine that the narrative that we're telling ourselves, if we don't get a handle on that, it can really take us in directions and places that we probably don't want to be.
Yeah, and I think we also need to give ourselves grace in that process because mistakes are inevitable. And I feel that that's where some of the best lessons are learned when we make mistakes. And we don't just beat ourselves up over and over again, but rather look at it and think, gosh, if I had it to do over again, what would I have done differently? And then the next time something similar happens, then you act quicker in a better way. And so that wouldn't happen if we didn't have those pitfalls, barriers, mistakes that happen along the way.
And so talk to us about that, because what you're sharing now resonates, at least for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, where we've made a decision and it turned out to good intention, but the outcome wasn't great and money was lost or an opportunity just didn't happen. And I know most entrepreneurs, being type A personalities, we can be hard on ourselves. We're the toughest critic of ourselves and we're just beating ourselves up about that. So when you look at it from a narrative, all different kinds of narratives, same situation, but many different narratives have different consequences, some good, some not so good. How do we take what potentially could be viewed as something that's negative, but create a narrative, like you said just now, that cuts us a break and gives us some slack?
I think we have to force ourselves to find the lessons in things. I am a firm believer in that, and it may not come right away. I mean, depending on the gravity of the quote unquote mistake or turn that we shouldn't have taken. But there's also the element of there's risk involved in being a business owner, and there's so many of those decisions that work out. And we tend to focus on the ones that don't. But what if we didn't take those chances at all? Then we would just be doing nothing. So there's bound to be some wins and some losses, but it's like, what can we learn from it? How can we grab a key lesson that we can help somebody else with or help ourselves in the future?
Love what you're saying, because what I'm hearing you say, and you can share Jeffrey on base or off base, something that happens. And look, if it's a success, that's very easy to talk about. We all love success. But if it isn't, what I'm hearing you say is, okay, well, cut yourself some slack. Imagine all the decisions that you wouldn't have taken if there was risk involved, what that would have meant. But at the same time, I'm hearing you say, hey, why don't you look back and look at the successes that you have had, put this into perspective. And I have the feeling that Amy will walk away feeling a whole lot better.
That I think so. And I think there's also always a little bit of a timing and element involved in decisions. And have you ever noticed this sometimes? Like it's a very similar decision can sort of work out really well and then not on a different day. There's just so many factors that many we can control and many that we have to go with the averages, I guess is the best way to say it. And if we're moving in the right direction, then I think the more time we spend beating ourselves up is the less time we're picking up and sort of shaking it off and just moving forward.
And what's interesting, you have this book, but you also have Maven Lane, the financial group, and you're doing all kinds of financial planning, but also wealth building. And again, you can share Jeffrey on base or off base. Amy, I would imagine that when it comes to wealth building, particularly when I'm starting out, well, I have the big picture goal of where I want to be. It's narrative, the money narrative specifically for the wealth building is going to be an important role in how I'm looking at things, the narratives that I'm telling myself. I'd love some of your insights on that.
Yeah, so most I do work with a number of business owners, but I also work with a lot of people that are not business owners. You know, it's really the habits that they may or may not have in place to start and looking at the whole picture, which is why I love planning so much because we're not just diving in and investing without a mission of just looking at a return and not looking at what it's there to accomplish and what we want to achieve. So with the financial planning piece, we look at all of it and just sort of identify obvious roadblocks and things that could get in the way and try to attack those. Of course, it's a relationship. So if I'm looking at all of that and helping and walking along that path with my clients, they also have to be willing to do their part and jump in and take action on the steps that need to be taken in that process.
And what's interesting, Amy, and you mentioned it at the start of our conversation, depending on the culture that you're in, talking about money can be a big taboo or something you just don't do. And perhaps in other situations or other cultures, it's okay to do and it's actually something that you should be doing. So, putting some of the cultural quote unquote norms aside for just a moment, a healthy money narrative, I mean, what does that look like in terms of ourselves? How are we sharing or not sharing that with family members, with loved ones? And then in the business sense, any guidance on that?
Yeah, it's a great question because obviously there is a balance there. And I do think that sharing some of our struggles or what we're going through, what we're dealing with our children, even just starting with our kids, just letting them know kind of what things cost, what that looks like. I have a chapter about college, a couple, and they've got aging parents and kids going to college and looking at the costs of what that looks like and what their commitment can be, what they can do. Because when we look at kids, don't know. I mean, they see their parents, they have jobs, they have money, but they don't really know necessarily the difference between a private school tuition and a public school tuition and what that could, the impact that could have on their parents' retirement. And there is a balance of not drilling it in to their heads every day of what impact that has, but also just letting them know this is really going to affect us. This is not easy. This is not an easy thing for us to do. And there's going to have to be some participation on your part or whatever the case. And with friends, with family, just a level of, hey, I've been there too, or I've been in that situation. Because I think a lot of times people are beating themselves up so much and they think when they're in the midst of something that they're the only ones that are that stupid to make that decision, or the things we tell ourselves that sometimes just somebody jump in and going, oh my gosh, I had a situation like this and this is what I did. And it can really just lighten things and make it not as taboo or embarrassing or something that we can't talk about.
And Amy, as you're talking about that, it actually takes me back to a conversation I had a while back. Very successful individual. And I will never forget the conversation. It went something along the lines of, look, Jeffrey, particularly when it comes to legacy, it can break up families. And the last thing I want to do is have my wealth, my legacy be a negative to the family. This was a very successful person. And the individual went on to say, at every birthday, not just for myself, but for the entire family, when it's a birthday, we're having a family dinner anyways, we're all together. And at least for me, I'm talking about, okay, this year, here's where we are financially, and maybe this family member hasn't been living up to his or her obligations. Well, that's going to affect you. If something were to happen to me today, you can expect this to happen. Or, hey, great change from last year. You're back up to where it is. But the individual said, I never want it to be a surprise when I'm no longer here that it's going to rip apart the family. And by the way, I'm treating the family all equal. There's no favorites here. If one child is getting ABC, then the next child is going to get ABC. There's no favorites here, but it was transparency. It was very open. It was a very positive money narrative that was being there. There was no surprises. It wasn't taboo. And each year there'd be an update. People would talk about that. And even the younger children, as young as they were, would talk about what's going on in their life and should they have some money, what that's looking like. I'd love your thoughts on that.
I think that is such an incredible gift and legacy to leave behind, to spend the time to organize whatever you have in the best way possible, and to be transparent about your wishes and what you would like to see happen. Because what that allows is when something happens to you, or if it happens suddenly, that people can take care of things in the easiest way possible while grieving the loss of a family member. And I know that for myself, the last thing I want is to have people scrambling around trying to put pieces of a puzzle together. on top of their daily lives and everything else that they have going on. So I really think that the planning on that side is just such a gift to the people that you love and care about.
Yeah, I really love the openness and the transparency because Amy, you're right. In certain circles, to talk anything about money, well, we just don't do that. That doesn't happen here. Or you're being indignant, you're being rude, you're not being considerate, you're being a bragger, you're showing off, which it's actually the opposite, particularly when it's with loved ones and families. And I know for myself and also people in the Deep Wealth community, when that topic comes up, we're very open of, hey, be transparent. There shouldn't be any surprises. Treat everyone equal. And if you happen to have some businesses or other kinds of things that really aren't that liquid, as you're getting up there on your journey, well, maybe it's time to liquidate them and keep some things in cash. I mean, that's a whole other episode or a series, if you will, of planning and wealth management, all those other kinds of things. But going back to the narrative, and you can share Jeffrey on base or off base, when we have the right kind of narrative with our loved ones, with our family members, when we do it in a right way, when it's open, when it's transparent, when it's not judgmental, it can actually be the biggest gift that we can give our loved ones and those around us.
Absolutely. I mean, just pulling the veil off of what's going on. And the key word there is gift, because when we leave things behind, they are gifts. And I've seen a lot of estates and family members that are at odds, significant odds. I mean, sometimes everything's fine, sometimes it's not. If we just have things as organized as possible, we don't really need to worry about that, because if people are not on the same page and everything's black and white, then there's nothing to fight about. It's the gray area that creates the issues most of the time, where one person reads the same sentence and sees something vastly different. So I do think it's kind of a harmonious gift on top of just being a gift.
Absolutely. And as we go through life, particularly towards the latter chapters of anyone's life, we're likely going to be in a different situation. And we're hopefully more established and we've now accumulated over time. We've done the right things, hopefully. So, from that perspective, how does the money narrative change from it's no longer just about accumulating, it's no longer just about achieving, but now it's going to be about legacy. Now it's going to be about giving. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that is the transition over time. We go through a phase where we're accumulating, and then we need to make sure that we are accumulating enough to keep the lifestyle that we want intact and the goals that we have. And then shifting into the legacy piece of what we want to do for the people that we care about, the charities we care about, and all of those things. And so there's different stages of planning involved. And really, the earlier that we address those things, even a lot of people think that you don't need to look at it until you hit a certain point. And I don't have a number to give you because that number would be different for everyone. Well, that's only for people with a lot of money, and a lot of money can mean a different number to different people. I think that it's important to look at those things, and it can be even before you have amassed a lot of money. If you have small children, you want to have documents in place that tell people who you want taking care of your children, what you want to see happen if you're incapacitated and you can't make decisions for yourself. So there's decisions that really have nothing to do with money, but simply don't force others to make decisions that they're not really equipped to make because they're not in our heads.
Absolutely. And it's really setting expectations. It's what we should expect, what we should be looking for, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And if you look at some of the common sayings out there, I mean, it's not so great. Hey, money doesn't grow on trees, or the flip side, earn you keep, or a penny saved is a penny earned. And the list just goes on and on. And some of them are okay. Some of them are a little bit on the negative side. So it sounds like our mind, from a mindset perspective, it's like a garden. And we need to be very deliberate not to let the weeds overtake the garden and to remove those money narratives, which no longer are serving us or maybe never even served us. We just picked it up and believed it hook, line, and sinker because someone that we respected or loved told it to us, but it really wasn't the case. Would love some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it brings up one of my favorite kind of common narratives of on the side where you have accumulated a lot and there's so many people who feel guilty about spending it on themselves. And it's rooted from someone or something of don't want to buy this for myself because that's I shouldn't do that. I should save the money. I should keep it aside. I mean, I've seen people that could possibly spend all the money that they have and they don't want to go buy new appliances. It's that depression era sort of thinking of just what if it all goes away and holding on to it. So I think there's balance. Whatever stage we're at, there is balance. And we have to be aware of that because that balance of making sure that we have money in the buckets to protect different things is very important. But it's also very important to not stick with the same strategy from start to finish because things change, life changes. And as that wealth grows, if you're still holding on to this really fear that should have left you years and years and years ago, it's time to look at that.
Absolutely. And it's also, I don't know about you, Amy, it seems just sadly in society, we really lost our North Star. As an example, I'll just speak for myself, a data point of one. When I see an ultra wealthy person, someone who's really successful, I am so thrilled for them that, hey, look at this. This person actually did it. They've earned it. They did what people said couldn't be done. And wow, the fact that they have this ultra luxury lifestyle, good for them. They can do that. And I've also come to realize it's also relative. So, as an example, I'll pick a number. Let's just pick $1 million, nice big round number there. $1 million may be a rounding error for one person. For another person, it could mean everything in the world and then some. Same number, two different narratives. Would love your thoughts about that.
Oh, it's so true. And I am in your boat on that. I mean, I love to see people reach success, hit their goals, exceed their goals. I mean, it's inspiring and it's so fun to see people, especially in similar industries that are doing things that you want to get to and to have those role models. But yeah, I mean, it's a relative number. I mean, and it comes down to what we spend, what our goals are, what we want to achieve. And some have much more modest goals than others. I mean, I have seen teachers numerous times that are in excellent positions for retirement because they kept saving and their expenses are extremely low and they're in a better financial position sometimes than the people with millions of dollars. Their spending is just in excess and there's no way that they can continue at that pace. So there are multiple factors: what we save, how much we spend, how much we earn on what we save, and so on.
And would love your thoughts. It's also a narrative, and so many of us, I feel, could really benefit from this. No judgment when I say that. So much of society is built on, well, if this happens, then that's going to happen. So if I get to this level, then I'm going to feel really happy. Or if I get that promotion or if I get that raise, then I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, as opposed to, hey, I'm not quite there. And that's okay because I'm really happy where I am right now. And yeah, some great things ahead. But the narrative to myself is I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm grateful for what I have and I'll be grateful for more to come. I'm not going to be negative. I'm not going to be jealous. I'm not going to be greedy. And I know easier said than done. It's called the human condition when we throw all the other factors into that. But it's really having that gratitude, having that joy, having the fulfillment of where we are today. Thoughts about that?
I think that especially for business owners, for entrepreneurs, I mean, you're you set one goal, you hit it, and then you're immediately looking at the next one. And it's so important to pause, like you said, and go, wow, out on the back, I did that. Good job, and I know for me, it's really hard to do that. That's a challenge for me to really acknowledge because you just continue to set goals. And we need to do that. And we also, I think that's why groups like yours and the community you have is so important because there's people that can sort of be each other's mentors and can remind each other to pause for a second, and be like, you did a great job. Sit on that for a second. Because otherwise, what do? We just keep going and going and then we die. We've got to enjoy what we're accomplishing in the process.
The saying goes, be in the moment. The past has already happened. The future isn't here. And that's why the present is a gift. As they say, so cliche, I know, but it's also so true.
Absolutely.
I mean, let me ask you this before we go into wrap up mode. Is there a question that I haven't yet asked that you want to get out there, or even a topic or a theme that we haven't discussed that you want to share with the Deep Wealth Nation before the wrap up mode?
I think we covered a lot. I mean, the thought coming into my head is just the reminder that about the tortoise and the hare, you don't have to sprint through it. just continue to set the habits, to question things that aren't working just as needed, and just be aware and look back and see how things are moving over time, because success, as they say, the get rich quick overnight, it typically is a process, and we achieve things by committing to different goals and changing habits, and those things create what we want and more of what we want over time.
Couldn't agree more. And actually, it's a perfect segue into the wrap up mode. Amy, on the Deep Wealth podcast, it's our tradition. I have the privilege, the honor to ask every guest the same question. It's a really fun question. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So, Amy, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do, and you're now going to go to any point in your life. Perhaps it's Amy as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. What would you tell your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Amy, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that I would go back and tell my young self, hey, all of these annoying qualities or annoying pieces about you are going to serve you very well. Give yourself some grace and pat yourself on the back here and there, and don't be so hard on yourself.
I love that. Isn't that the truth? Don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself some grace, pat yourself on the back. It's some terrific advice out there. And Amy, before we wrap things up, if a listener in Deep Wealth Nation, they have a question for you, they want to speak with you, where would be the best place online to reach you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, mavenlanefinancialgroup.com. And then we also have a page. It's mavenlanefinancialgroup.com/deep wealth. And happy to connect. There's a scheduling button on the main page as well.
Absolutely love that, Deep Wealth Nation. It doesn't get any easier. Go to the show notes. It's a point and click. It's all there. And Amy, congratulations. This is a wrap. As we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. This was a lot of fun.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.